start. I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Newport Commission work session for Newport. Tuesday, April 10th. It's 12 o'clock in the South Beach Activities Room, and all the commissioners are present. So the first item is public comment. Yes.
Yeah.
Will it pick it up?
It's probably better if they come.
Oh, okay. And is it on?
It is.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yale 40 LW. I just want to make a quick comment. You know, I know that the tariff rates and stuff had not been part of the rates and fees, and maybe that's changed. I missed the last meeting. I really believe that they should be, just for the simple fact is they're a fairly old document. 4 or 5 years ago, Walter or somebody could probably give you a better idea when they were created, but they have not been increased or anything over a period of time. I realize that there's nobody maybe knocking on the doorstep now to use them, but I don't think the port wants to find itself in a position where it is negotiating with somebody and going, wait, time out, the posted rates we have, we need to adjust those up before we start talking to you. I think you need to keep them going. I think, you know, maybe just a simple, you know, across the board increase might be a good idea just to keep in line. You can do some quick checks with some other ports on where they're at on their tariff rates, but I do believe that they're, you know, maybe Doug doesn't know that, but it's a fairly old document that maybe needs to be modernized and brought up to speed. In the event somebody comes knocking on the door, you have a, you know, what's your rates? Here they are. Instead of, oh, wait a minute, you know, and trying to change them quickly. You're doing it now, so I think it would be a simple addition to maybe bring them up to speed. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So, the first thing is resolution setting fees and charges. We're still in the review process. So I do have a question for you, Doug. Is this document here, that's in our packet, has it been changed from last? Does this reflect all the changes?
To the best of my knowledge, it has not been changed, but I have reflected everybody's request for specific changes in my master document here.
Okay.
And I didn't want to bother confusing everybody by updating it yet, since it's still under review.
Sure.
There'll be a lot of comments probably from today, so I'll integrate all that and get you another version.
I still have my first copy where I made a bunch of notes and stuff like that, so.
And if you wanted, I'd be happy to mention the few things that I have in here that are highlighted.
Sure. So let's go ahead and do it. Now this is, you have it highlighted on...
my master copy.
Okay.
But on the next version that goes out to you, it'll be, probably we'll highlight it in gray, the items that we changed, so the public doesn't have to search through the whole document.
Yeah, that'd be great, so we know what has changed.
So, well, first off, too, I want to mention, Walter has provided some very helpful feedback on some suggestions on this rate sheet, and we've implemented much of that as well, so that'll also be in there. And as well as priorities on the capital projects as well, and we'll get to that. So first item on page 5562, section 2.
Whoa.
Page 55 and 62.
Where is
Section 2, Bayfront charges. I'm sorry, maybe that my copy. I'm sorry, my copy is.
Section 2, Bayfront charges. Okay, that's page 5 of the handout. Okay, got it.
Under parking permits, we have two sections there: commercial fishermen and the public parking. We have added under both sections. Before we had an annual and a semi-annual rate. And we've added a quarterly rate as well, so that fishermen that aren't fishing the whole period aren't impacted as much by the new rates.
Okay.
And likewise for the public, there's a quarterly rate. So that will be shown. That'll show up on the next item. The next one that has an adjustment or is being looked at is Section 3, International Terminal Charges, item C. 15, exceptions for certain vessels. That is right now highlighted, and we have several discussions going on it, so I have not changed anything there yet.
What was that again?
I'm sorry.
It was section
C15.
C15. Oh, exemptions. Okay, got it.
I can slow down. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's okay.
The next item is Section 4, South Beach charges.
Okay.
Item G is in golf. We added 2E for veterans.
Oh, thank
And it could have gotten complicated, but we always go for simpler if possible, or I try to. In parentheses, it has disabled, retired, or active duty. And all of those have to have an ID card. So we have a lower, and it is the lowest rate of all the rates on there for the military.
Well, do you know what percentage
What's
is?
it going to be?
Well, it didn't increase by 1% because we didn't have it before.
Oh, okay.
We suggest setting it at, excuse me, $50 per year
Okay.
for unlimited.
But that's not in this packet right now.
No.
He said that. He said it just now.
He's going through his math.
Yeah.
And that's any military, correct?
Well, not any, no, either disabled, retired, or active duty.
Right, and
With an ID.
okay, yeah. Veteran.
But people like myself who were military, Vietnam era veteran, we don't get it because we don't fall into any of those categories.
Okay.
So the next item that's highlighted, I'm assuming there's a next item, let's see here. Yes, section 7, P like Paul for security.
Wait a second. Hold on. Not section 7. Section 7.
Page 10.
Okay. The top of page 11. Okay. Security.
Security, after the 5%, it had said 5% overhead. The overhead has been changed to administrative fee, and there's some legal reasons for that.
Admin fee.
The amount stays the same.
Okay.
And that's all the changes I have so far, so I'll jot down others that we get here, and then we'll come up maybe as early as the end of tomorrow with an updated sheet on the website for everything.
Okay.
And we'll just highlight the changes once again.
So let's go down the row here. Sarah, did you have any comments or suggestions?
I'm overwhelmed. Hi. I don't like the parking fees. I think they're way too high.
Parking fees, which,
Well, one thing I should mention on those parking fees too, there was one adjustment in the price. We did knock down the commercial fishermen's annual rate from $390 down to $325.
okay, hold on. What page are you on, Sarah?
5, right in the middle.
Page 5.
The parking permit on section 2.
So basically, the commercial fisherman rate equates to, from highest to lowest for the times, $3 a day, $2.50 a day, and $2 a day.
And so what did you change again?
The
390 to 325.
and we added a quarterly rate in there to facilitate some folks.
And this is going to be for the entire bayfront, including the fenced-in property, correct?
The parking, the fenced-in part that we're doing will be for the public.
Okay.
That will keep the public out away from the fishermen and the forklifts and what have you, all the traffic. So the fishermen, I imagine we'd let the fishermen park in there if they want, but I wouldn't see why they'd want to.
Okay. And this should cover all the bayfront.
All the bayfront, and I believe, don't quote me, I think we talked about some work at South Beach as well. So I can go into that more in depth separately if you'd like. We're in talks with the city on a possible solution to part of their problem for parking on bayfront. I came up with a 2-phase solution for a big part of it. And I had a meeting last Wednesday with Spencer, the city manager, and Darren and I have a meeting scheduled later this week, I think it is, with Derek. So we will be discussing those in more depth. And they're just discussions right now.
Sure.
They're brainstorming, so bear with me if I don't throw them out here.
No, that's fine, because you need to know the logistics of it too, so. Okay, yes, sir.
But that will address Walter's issue of parking over here.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, sir.
It's just that I've got feedback from fishermen, and they're like, well, we don't use it every day. So the yearly thing, the daily rate doesn't resonate with them because we don't use it every day. A lot of them said, well, I just want to buy them. And they just don't understand what I want. So enthused about parking there anymore, so I think we won't have an estimated 275. I think some people, a lot of times it is the deckhands that are there, although it's a mix of people, I'm sure, but, you know, they don't have as much money.
I tried to take that into consideration, and that was one of the reasons we went back and lowered the annual rate
Right.
further.
There's no like weekly rate or anything?
The administration of that would be
Yeah.
very, very difficult, and then we get into policing it and a lot of problems. We need to keep things simple for the court staff so they can focus on court-related things that are more critical, like working on the infrastructure that needs fixing for everybody.
Okay, so I have a question real quick. So let's say we implement this, we pass all our changes and stuff, and it's implemented in like, let's say a month into it, there's some problems. I mean, obviously, we can come back and negotiate and change some of these things, correct?
This document can be changed at any time during the
Yeah,
year.
that's what I-
And that's one of the reasons that last time I mentioned we didn't do the service to the RV rates that we should. We need to investigate that much further and work on it and have a better rationale. And we'll do that a little later. But right now, all those people are locked in for rates anyway for this year, so it would be senseless to put the effort into that. And we have a lot of other things on our plate.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I mean, I knew that was the answer, but so, Sarah, if the case happens, if it's a real problem, then we can definitely come back and address it.
And it's at the manager's discretion as well. And if I were to change something in here to solve a problem, my next step, according to the documents, are to then, at the next monthly meeting with the commissioners, to bring that up.
Sure, okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think it's good that people are speaking up, you know, it says they're looking at their website.
Well, and when we do the press release for Doug, I had mentioned that in there about, you know, some of the things that we're doing. One of the things was the resolution for fees and rates and charges and stuff. So we'll get that out as well. Did you have any other questions on there?
No, like I said, I'm just kind of,
Overwhelmed?
well, I don't know, I'm trying to, it's so many changes for everybody. I'm just one of those people that is like, okay. So to save time at regular meetings, I would need to know to talk to profit center people a little bit to answer some of my questions. I just don't know what my proper discovery paths are. That if I'm like, Doug's busy doing stuff, I could talk to Aaron about something that he would definitely know to answer some of my questions, or Doug's available, so can I go to him? Or what path do I take as a commissioner?
Well, the preference is to go to Doug first, and then if Doug, you know, if you have specific questions in a certain area, let Doug direct you to either Aaron or whoever he feels comfortable with. But really, all of it should be funneled through him. So, but yeah, I mean, I've got questions too. I mean, I didn't bring it with me, but my list for the RV rates and stuff, you and I had discussed this, and I thought that some of them were kind of low. So I'm kind of making notes, and then when I get those, then I'll bring them to you and say, this is, you know, my idea, and then you can flush it out from there. So that's how I've been kind of processing.
It's a very dynamic document. As you see, we've already lowered some rates where people have addressed issues.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Any other?
No, I just,
Okay. Okay. Stuart.
On these rates, especially as they relate to commercial fishermen, have we approached Heather and the commercial fishermen's user group for a more formal assessment of this?
Not for formal assessment, but I've had multiple meetings with Heather, and I have another one scheduled Friday or Thursday. I have to check my calendar.
And she does know about this. So.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, I think the intent, one of the intent of that committee is to advise this board specifically on certain issues. This would be a specific direction. I know you probably have many meetings with her, but it seems like the board could more specifically ask for that feedback for our next meeting.
I have.
Yeah.
So, okay.
is that just for
On
Heather,
this.
or
On this and many other things.
is that just, I mean, the fishermen haven't had to give their opinion, it's just Heather,
Just Heather, her feedback as their representative.
but they haven't had it.
I don't believe they have met. Aaron, when was the next meeting for the commercial fishery?
I talked to Heather this past week. She's from the last week. She said she'd call me when she gets back.
Well,
And
she'll be back soon because I have a meeting with her.
to try and schedule her next meeting. So it's not been scheduled yet.
I mean, I guess that's an important differentiation here. I mean, maybe I'm just beating a dead horse here, but, you know, I mean, we're not asking for her opinion as Midwater trawler person.
No, I asked her opinion as the chairperson of the CFUG.
Okay.
So do you have any
No,
other
I don't have
questions on
anything
this?
else.
And also I asked her opinion as, with her other hat, of Midwater Trawlers.
Oh, yeah. And this is posted on the website, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, okay. All right. Walter?
The only thing I would say is that, with the increases of the RV park, make sure that our Good Sam, take some of the comments from the Good Sam club that we get. And I know that in the past, some of our accommodations aren't up to snuff to what some of their high-level parks charge. You don't have a pool and so forth. Just make sure that we're not charging the same.
Absolutely. Compare apples and apples.
Compare apples to apples, that we're not overpricing ourselves.
I can interject. Patricia, can I
Absolutely.
interject something in there?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
One of the things that, Mark, did you do that ordering yet on those tables? In process. Okay. We are in the process of ordering, we've gotten quotes and we're in the process of ordering 95 picnic tables. So it's unbelievable to have an RV park without picnic tables. And we ordered half-size picnic tables that have a bracket where I've used them at other places, they convert into a bench or a half-size picnic table, and then you can put two of them together and have a full table if you need to. And we didn't order them for all the sites, but we initially have 95 of them coming in. We got an amazing discount on them. They got knocked down from, no quote, but 230 or 40 down to 160 a piece. And they're good metal with the Trex type of thing. Yeah. And then part of the condition of ordering them was that they allow us to have the same discounted rate on the additional ones that we buy in the next fiscal year. So, and also we told them if we were going to buy them at that rate, we also wanted, they have spare parts kits, and we wanted as many of the spare parts kits as Mark could negotiate. I didn't want to push them too far. I'd already pushed them that far, and then I turned it over to him.
Okay.
So that will be a big visual change to the park when folks start coming in this summer, this spring and summer. So that's one item. Although I sure would like to see that jacuzzi since.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't we all? Okay. Any other comments?
Nope,
Walter?
that was it.
Jeff?
Yes. Do we have a target meeting date that we're looking to have the rate sheet finalized and voted on by the commission?
I really can't answer that.
Okay. So it's
I don't know the answer to that, I should say.
Maybe.
Yeah,
The
I
May
have
meeting?
it on for
Okay.
May 9th. As you know, we're reviewing all, this is our second meeting and dealing with these issues, and it looks like May 9th is our target meeting.
Is that our regular?
It's the annual budget meeting,
okay.
May 9th, so it would be a different than our regular, than our other
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
And
All right.
if I'm not wrong, because I don't have the calendar in front of me, I think May 9th is the actual budget committee, and then the commission approves it at the May regular meeting.
Correct.
So these things would go into effect on the fiscal year, beginning of the fiscal year.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
So when we, like I said, I was a little overwhelming, not just my own brain, everybody's fault at the And when do we meet again to finalize? I guess we would, when do we discuss as a group the changes that we might individually be talking to Doug about?
Well, it's my understanding, are we going to have another meeting after this one? Is there another one scheduled in before our general meeting? There's not, so this is the last one.
I think we could schedule one if necessary.
Okay, but otherwise, if we don't, then it's going to be on the May 9th meeting at 6 p.m. That is not our regular meeting, that's just the budget, the annual budget meeting.
So we won't really be meeting to discuss it as a group.
This is why we're doing this. So we started last week, and then this is our second week of going over these items. That's why I'm trying to go through these, so because we still have to do the personal expenses and project priorities.
Not to keep kicking it down the road, but the budget committee meeting is with the budget advisors that we have.
I believe it is.
Yes.
It's a
So-
combination.
It's the first meeting with them, there may be a second optional.
Here's what I'm saying is in terms of, to get at maybe everyone's question here, when are we going to be saying aye, yes, or no on this entire document? It seems like getting the input from the budget committee might be helpful to us. we're talking about implementing them on the fiscal year, July 1, is there a reason why we wouldn't be approving these either at a later May meeting or even in the June meeting?
Well, that's what she just said. We would do it probably at the later May meeting. So this isn't earlier in the month. And chances are, if that's on a Tuesday and you meet with the budget committee, I doubt we're going to get everything done in one day. So we'll probably schedule for another meeting. And then after that is resolved, then it gets scheduled to the regular commission meeting, which is later in May. And it would all be voted on.
Is everybody comfortable with it?
I think that's the way it is. That's just how it's programmed. I mean,
Do
yeah, we
whatever
can
want,
change
right?
it. This is
That's
true.
okay.
Do you want to change it, Stuart?
That's what I'm asking. I mean, I think there's some questions. And the question is does everybody feel like they have enough time for that? That was my...
I think we do have enough time. I think this is what I'd like to say to everybody here. I mean, obviously, some of these rates and fees, I've looked at them, and I do have some advice of raising some of them. And I'm going to get that to Doug so he can implement. But what I would like to see from Doug is that once we have all of our questions and stuff sent to him, that we have like an updated document that shows what it was before and what it is now, what it's being changed to.
Do the gray line.
Exactly. And then so it's really important to us. We don't have to do it at this meeting. I mean, you can definitely email Doug directly. I think Walter's already done that, with his suggestions. I know I've talked to him verbally on the phone about, the RV park rates and stuff like that. But if anybody has specific questions on any of these, email them to Doug so that he can, put that into the document. And then we'll see what it is now, what is, proposed, and then we can discuss that. And I think the perfect time to do that would be at the May 9th meeting, because then he'll have a lot of opportunity. He'll give you from now to May 9th to put all that stuff in there.
Yes, and I'm sure the appointed budget folks will also have feedback. And I've already provided them with a fair amount of information in preparation for that meeting. And as we go along, as we firm up some of these other things, they'll have that so that when they come in, for example, like the fund accounting stuff I sent out yesterday. And so the research that I'm doing on these areas I think is useful for other folks, so I'm distributing it as I go through it and learn new things. And rather than just put it on my desk, I make sure other people have it as well. And I'm wanting to help make sure that the budget process is not a rubber stamp and that everybody has a lot of feedback there.
Yeah, I feel good with those dates. I mean, just everybody needs to know that you have an opportunity and definitely get those in so we can either talk about them now, you can let me know now, or if after the meeting you think, wow, I really feel strongly about some of the stuff, email it to Doug so that he can start compiling this information and everything, because he's got the master document. Sound good? That sounds very reasonable. Okay, so Jeff, did you have another question?
No.
Okay, so
Could I ask a question?
I'm going to give you this because you're the liaison.
It was on the parking thing. I just had a question on, is this parking all on Port property? Because you know that
Yes,
we're
it
in
is.
our own parking.
Yes.
It's on Port of Newport property.
Okay.
No.
The solution we're trying to work with the city, though, will involve parking on Port of Newport property for people that will come over and utilize the city streets. So it may help relieve some.
I know you had a meeting with Spencer recently on that, and we're just curious. I was curious what you're talking about with these rates.
This public parking section here is only about, we're starting out with it'll be a 30 to 40 car fenced in area with a short chain link fence that will be on our property somewhere between the yacht club property designation and our office in that area, and it will be fixed up a bit more than it is now. And it will we're planning to have a key card system there. It'll be unlocked during the day. People can come and go as they want, but there'll be permits issued, and the public can park there for longer term periods if they want, and it's open to anybody, but I suspect the people who will use it will be the business owners on Bay Boulevard and their employees.
So Dietmar, if you have other questions, you can hook up with Doug on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to move along. So we are done with the rates and fees. And again, if you guys have any questions, if the commissioners have any questions whatsoever, please email those to Doug. I mean, I've got some, and I've got some suggestions, which I'm going to be emailing him as well. So he can compile that. And then we will have a document that shows what they were and what is proposed. And that'll be ready for the May 9th meeting, correct?
It will be. I may, if, with any luck, if we get enough feedback on it, maybe there'll be a version before that also.
Okay, perfect.
We'll try to keep the website as updated as we can.
Okay, good. All right, so that's that. I'm going to write this down. It's 411, right? Okay, so next is the motion to increase the GM spending limit from 5,000 to 10,000. So, Doug, you had sent out an email. Did everybody get that email?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go ahead and this is, hold on a second here. Hold on. I know I saw that. And I know I printed it. Okay, here it is. It was sent out yesterday with respect to last week's discussion of raising the GM's decision-making and signature authority level. So you want to go ahead and talk about this stuff about your...
I did not bring my copy with me, Patricia.
I'm going to pass it down to him.
So basically, let me just read this, the commissioners, with respect to last week's initial discussion of raising the GM's decision-making and signature authority level, the inflationary effect has made the current $5,000 limit unrealistic and unnecessarily restrictive. An analysis of the board's audited accounts payable expenditures for the last 3 fiscal years shows that there were 194 checks which were over $5,000. Over half, about 52% of these checks, 101 of them, were in the range of 5,000 to 10,000. So their distribution was nearly even for each of the years. They were basically for the last fiscal year 32, then 32, then 37 the year before that. So that is the rationale for why. And Mark, would you address that issue a little bit more, please?
So those figures that he mentioned, I pulled out of our accounting records quickly. We currently, if we have a bill that comes in, we either look to see that we have a contract in place that has been approved by the commission, and that gives us the authority to pay that bill, or we have a purchase order that's filled out. And with our purchase orders, if they're over 5,000, that invoice would become part of a consent calendar at the commission meeting, and it would be approved that way. And when we would pay that bill, we would either have know that the contract in place has already been approved, or a purchase order with an invoice that has been approved at commission meeting. So one of the things then is commission meetings, normally are once a month, so it can be 2, 3, 4 weeks where we have an invoice that's come in or a need that has come in, and we write a purchase order, get it in the meeting packet. But sometimes we're tripping over those, the purchase orders, the bills, the consent calendar, contracts, and so I think with this increase, it could help eliminate some of that extra time from staff tracking those, looking for approvals, things like that. The numbers that were listed here too, it includes, again, quickly pull this out of QuickBooks, so the checks that were written, that includes checks that were written based on purchase orders that were approved and contracts that were approved. It's not broken out.
So contracts that were approved like earlier in the year and stuff like that.
Like,
they're
an
just now
example from this last year would be that OBEC for the 457 tile replacement. We had a contract in place and we received 3 or 4 invoices. We knew when we received those invoices for $30,000, $40,000 or more, they were approved. We didn't need to write a purchase order to get that purchase order approved.
All right.
An example the other way would be like the Leisure Interactive software renewal for the RV park reservation software. That came in, it's not on a contract, so that invoice ended up in a meeting packet so many weeks down the road in the consent calendar and was approved that way, and then that became approved on our purchase order. That was approved to pay.
Got it. Okay, I understand the logistics of it. So Doug had sent me a thing about a motion, a potential motion, and what it says basically that the Port of Newport increase the signature authority of the general manager from $5,000 to $10,000 with the restriction that no individual vendor may be paid over $20,000 within a period of 30 calendar days without the board's advance written authorization. So he feels that this motion would, serve to help alleviate some of that congestion that happens with all of that.
Yet still give the board the controls that they wanted and have expressed. So if it would prevent any kind of collusion because you could only write 2 checks to a given vendor in that period.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Mark, on that, have any vendors experienced any impacts as a result of the current practices? And have you had people call up and say, we're not doing business with you anymore because it's...
They haven't called, they haven't said that, but they will sometimes call asking what's the status on an invoice that they sent 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Or late fees, we're not incurring any late fees or anything?
Not too many, no. I'm not aware of any. Yeah.
Just the calls asking for more time, which are a pain in the...
Yeah, it's extra time to dig out the information and respond to those.
So these are all bills that are already approved and budgeted, right? So
most of them are, it sounds like, yeah.
Well,
the only thing that I have to say is like what happens when, say you have a piece of equipment off getting fixed and then they want another and then you end up with a tugboat.
So that,
Aaron, would you like to
so
address that?
what should happen there is before we, it's just like when you put your car in the shop, if you're on a budget, you might show up and say, look, I've got, I want you to give me an idea, give me an estimate first, go ahead and start the work, but do not exceed a certain amount. That's the way we ought to be doing it. So if you put a piece of equipment in, and I can say that it's been my experience over the years that when someone feels that the equipment is critical, that's when it's more likely to just go ahead and feel like we got to get this done and go ahead and do the work. But if we're doing things correctly, we should get a quote first, put the equipment in the shop, explain to them that we've approved funding up to a certain amount, not to exceed that, and you stop work and call if it looks like it's coming close to that.
And is that our standard operating procedures with our vendors, whether it be Halco Welding or some other place?
It has been since I've been here, yes.
Okay.
My only question is, and you answered that, Mark, was how many of these weren't contracted and were unexpected, and that's the number that I would need to know, is how many of these were unexpected of the ones between 5 and 10 that were not contracted, and we might incur fees on those, because I can't remember too many coming up in my years in the commission. And we did with past management, the limit was 5,000, and then we gave them 2 or 3 10,000 up to 10,000 at their discretion, and I've always felt more comfortable with that.
Was that a question to Mark? Or?
No, I'm just stating that I would like to know, how many of these were actually were unexpected, where they just came out and said, hey, this needs to be done now, to where it wasn't pertinent, or we couldn't put it off until the next commission meeting.
Okay. Jeff, did you have any weigh in?
No, I know this isn't the biggest deal in the world, but I can see both sides.
Yeah. I will just say I don't have a problem with this whatsoever. I think that with our accounting and our new management and everything, I think that there's a real sense of transparency here. So I don't have a trust issue. I think that this is I mean, obviously, it's even in the statute, right? Is that correct, in the ORS statutes? That's how it is?
They had this, yeah, in Oregon, actually, I think it was 2006, I'm not positive, increased their limits from 5,000 to 10,000 because of the inflationary issues and the fact that it became unrealistic.
Sure. And I, you know, I think that that's a good thing. I really do. Is this something that's an action item now, or?
I think so, because we're signing checks right now. We're in business.
Okay.
We're open for business.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Has it been have you run into it, and if so, how many times?
I have not run into it because other people are handling a lot of that at the beginning, the first couple of weeks that I've been in, and I've just recently started taking on that. But I can tell you, I've read these lists of the 200 checks that did get done. I'm familiar with them. I know who they were, and I feel I need that authority to make this operation smoother and to focus the operation on doing things efficiently and to address some bigger issues.
Well, I got to tell you, it gives me a lot of comfort knowing that a lot of these things were from projects that we have already, you know, ordained, basically. We've approved them. And so this is just a residual of that, just making sure things get paid on a timely basis and stuff.
I really do like the job, too, and I don't want you to fire me, so I'm not going to be writing bogus checks.
I know you're not going to. Trust me, I know that.
I mean, are we creating a solution to a problem? I mean, I think what maybe maybe my head is like, I don't see this, I guess I haven't seen this as that big of a problem.
Well, I'm telling you it is, and I'm in the general manager chair, and I'm doing the stuff, and it is.
So, but you haven't really shown that to me.
I just gave you a list of 3 years. I just gave you a list of 3 years in response to your request from last week. And I am happy. You know, I think. Okay, I'm sorry. I've made my.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying the questions that were just asked was, yes, there were those documenting those checks, but of those, a lot of those, it sounds like some of those were actually checks that were already pre-approved as well, that were over 5,000, if I'm understanding what's going on.
That's exactly the point that I'm making, is that most of those, many of them were pre-approved. I merely want to have the ability to sign them without taking them back and go through the process.
But I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding, because I thought that once the board had already approved all those ones for those projects have already been, as you said, ordained. You don't need to come back to the board again. What am I missing?
I think what he's saying is if it's over let's say it's $5,600, he still, because his limit is only $5,000, we have to come back for that approval.
But for those projects that we've already said, like the Port Top 5 approach,
Okay.
he's not coming to us every time there's a $5,500 expense to OVEC for I'm asking that as a question.
Okay, and this is maybe an answer, because maybe in that motion, when we approve that, whatever it is, like we approve $50,000 worth of engineering at one of the docks and stuff, I don't think in that motion it says, and we give the manager approval to sign all those checks up to $50,000, because this still lies underneath of $5,000. So even though we approve it for $50,000 or $100,000, when that bill comes in and it's $6,000, it's got to come back to us and get the approval.
Is that
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
I think that's
is that
that
the case,
mechanism.
Mark?
Sorry, my voice is gone, but one of the things that comes up is if something breaks, and so that can possibly be over 5,000, and it's an immediate need, and it hasn't been approved. So that's a situation that comes up.
I think that's at the core of this was. I'm sorry, Mark.
I was going to ask you a repeat for a question that you could just ask.
I guess maybe I was a little confused, and we might all be saying the same thing here. But on those big projects that are capital improvement projects that the board has already endorsed for the port to move forward on, if there are progress payments or payments that are directly associated with those projects that have been approved already, does the port staff have to bring those back repeatedly to the board, or once that project is approved by the board, all of the invoices, if you will, associated with that project are essentially approved?
That is correct. Yeah, they're essentially approved. You'll see in your accounts paid report each month, each quarter.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to get at.
But let me ask you this, so if we approve a project for $100,000, just a second, if we approve a project for $100,000, okay, in January, and then, you know, you need to start paying bills, and one comes in for $6,600, you have to come to us for approval because the manager has this thing saying he can only write a check up to $5,000?
No, not in that case, because that contract has been approved.
Okay.
So what I can hear is different here is that there's a difference between projects and contracts. We have projects that are not under contract. We have not taken previously approved contracts back to you and said, hey, can we sign this check? But say, for example, things that are on the capital improvements list, like you mentioned, Stuart. So recently we did some of that paving out at the terminal. That was a capital improvement project that was on the list. We did put that on the consent calendar because it was above $5,000 and it had not been under contract. So it was a project that was identified that needed to get done, but there was no contract signed. So then we are bringing all of those to the Port Commission.
Just a second, Jeff. Sarah, you had your hand raised.
Well, it was helpful to hear from the people who write the checks and all of that, and how that works. I had no idea that's all right. And I see the difference now between contract and approved capital improvement projects. And so it's 2018, and things are more expensive. That it is a trust issue, and if we're writing most of our big checks for stuff that are contracted, and then the checks that are causing delays and problems and getting paid when they want to get paid is non-contracted projects, just like what you said, that pavement. I see no reason to bog down the bookkeeping for a couple months behind it. So in that regard, I think it's a good
Okay. Jeff, you had your hand up.
How much was that pavement project?
I think it was 12 something. It was right around here, if I remember right. 12.3 or 12.5. So that wouldn't come up anyway. But another one would be security cameras. That was another one that came up here recently, and I think that was about. If you remember, that was a couple months back on the consent calendar. That was one right there. So.
Questions or comments?
I see both sides.
But I think if okay, since this one is going over, just a quick alert to the commission on an email would be quicker than.
But we can't do that. We can't approve it though.
No.
We have to be.
We can be aware of it, and then we can go tell Doug I hate it. Don't do it.
But that doesn't get the check signed. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So, am I hearing that we're not? I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. But we need to get moving on to some other issues here. So, yes, Jeff. I'm sorry.
No, you beat me.
Do we want to have a compromise? Do we want to split the difference and go 7? I mean, if we're a little split here,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I feel comfortable knowing that the Oregon statutes listed as $10,000. I mean, obviously, the state has availed it upon themselves. I feel that that's, a good number. I don't have a problem with it. I see the issue. I mean, I'm in business. I have the exact same thing. I have a limit, and anything over that I have to contact my owners on. There's just all there is to it. So I personally, I look at it from a different point of view, and I just don't have a problem with it. And it makes things go a lot smoother for them. And you're right, staff does not need to listen to phone calls. I mean, every little phone call adds up after a while, and people call and ask, when are we going to see that check in the mail? So I get that. You had something else? Nobody?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'd like to put it off to the next regular commission meeting and just get a little more information about how many times this has actually come up as an issue where it has stopped things at the port from happening.
Yeah.
What's the threshold for purchase orders? Is it 5K?
It is. It's that same 5,000.
Would that change?
It shouldn't change, should it?
Well, this is just the manager spending authority.
I know, but I'm trying to say, even if this was moved forward, it's not like that's going to usher in everything. You still have to do a purchase order in some ways. I guess.
Yeah, the purchase order would still be written up. But Doug would be able to sign those up to that limit without that invoice having to be consent calendar to the commission.
Okay.
And
Yes, Doug.
I'll just interject. I did last week pay close attention to the concerns of the commissioners, and I adjusted that increase with the caveat at the end of it that I think is good insurance.
Can you read it again?
Sure. That the court report increased the signature authority of the general manager from $5,000 to $10,000 with the restriction that no individual vendor may be paid over $20,000 within a period of 30 calendar days, without the board's advanced written authorization. Which I think advanced written authorization, it would have to be like a vote, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So that's the motion that Doug had suggested for that. Questions? I mean, do we want to make a motion? Are we ready to do that?
Walter, you felt more.
I'm not ready to make it.
Jeff?
The motion can be made.
Yeah, you wanted to do it later on in the month. Jeff?
I hate to create more work, but I understand that. Do we want to wait and see if it's a problem? Do we want to honor Walter's request? Do we want to, I don't know.
Okay, so you want to wait maybe till the end of till the next commission meeting? Is that what you want to do? Do you feel comfortable in that?
Is that something?
Is it really going to impact you if we wait a couple more weeks to discuss this one at our regular meeting, I guess?
Well, I guess I think it's a matter of principle. I've been tasked with trying to turn around the board and bring it to a financial good position and responsibly do what I've learned to do over the course of my life. And this is my recommendation to you. I told you my rationale for it, and I've got 482 other items, so that's an imaginary number, but in front of that get this done, move on, open the board up for business. So I'll leave it at that.
Sarah, did you have anything you want to say?
No, I think it's a sign of the times, and it is a trust issue, and it just is so early on that I don't see where we're going to change. We have a tendency to stay in the same spot, but I don't know if another meeting and go around, except that Walter did request some records to review.
Yeah, what you kind of outlined in here.
The records right there.
Yeah, right here. We're in the range of 5,000 to 10,000. Their distribution was nearly.
I mean, we drilled down into that a little bit more, though.
But you want more information? Is that what you're saying?
We've already been given a little bit more context to that.
Yeah, my question is, how many times does it actually stop things from actually happening? Not.
Well, I don't think it ever really stops anything from happening. It's just one of those things. I mean, when somebody calls wondering when their check is, I mean, does it stop anything? No, but it does. I mean, hey, I have to wait for the next commission meeting to get it approved. Whether that be 1 week, 2 days, a full month out. I mean, that's the inconvenience to staff. I see that. I recognize that. I'm in a business where I have that exact same thing. So I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. And I think we should move forward with it. So we have so many other pressing issues ahead of us. And let me tell you something. If anybody thinks that Doug is not forthcoming with information, I mean, the emails we've been getting, I mean, he's been going in, looking at the bills, diagnostics, everything. I mean, he's on top of it. I think, there's not an issue. And staff is going to put in a significant amount of time on a lot of this stuff.
It actually skews our
I've never seen this before. I've never seen this kind of detailed information come before me, ever.
It also skews us and has skewed our looks at the books because they were always behind.
That's right.
It's like, oops, well, no, that was done last month, but we didn't see what it cost, and so we would have a big delay on bill paying and then invoice invoicing and stuff is also where it needs to come up to speed better, and any kind of relief we can give the staff in that regard, I think makes it all smoother and makes everyone feel better.
Yes, Jim, did you have a question?
No.
Oh. All right, so nobody's willing to make a motion or anything?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. You have the wording.
I make a motion that the Board of Commissioners of the Board of the Board increase the signature authority of the general manager from $5,000 to $10,000 with the restriction that no individual member may be paid over to $20,000 within a period of 30 calendar days without the board's advance written authorization.
Okay, I need a second to that.
Question.
Yes.
Can I second and then offer an amendment?
Well, you have, this is discussion. Okay, you have to second it, and then you have a discussion, and then it goes to the amendment.
Okay, I second.
Okay, now it comes to discussion. Go ahead.
In order to try to move things along, but also have the spirit of compromise, I wanted to think about offering an amendment to go to 7,000. So.
And the rationale behind that would be?
The rationale just to, if we can do anything that can be a compromise on the commission, to try to do that. And it's not like we can't turn it up to 10 a month from now or 2 months from now, or at some point we decide. I had I've had a point where I was writing checks to where I didn't always write checks for the business. I wasn't a signer the first day I started on the business. I went through a process, and after a while, once everything was running smooth, I became a signer. I got given more authority as I went, and so it worked well that way for me. So I understand steps. So this is just something I was thinking about as a compromise.
Okay, so Sarah, you're second would want to make an amendment. Do you agree with that amendment?
No, but I can make another compromise.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor, and we have a second. And he's made an amendment to that to 7. So we're still in discussion, so go ahead.
Well, my discussion item would be, and obviously not commission rules yet, but why don't we just make it a motion now and turn it into a resolution, like Jeff was saying? It goes along with his amendment. Give it some time. I know you were just at 7,000, but anyway, if we made it a motion now and then turn it into a resolution.
Well, this is a resolution to do this.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm just saying that.
so you don't want to do the 7,000? You wouldn't be willing
And
to?
I'm not in a resolution.
Okay.
Patricia,
Yes.
I believe it's a motion, not a resolution.
Well, I'm sorry, a motion.
But also conversely, you could set it at the requested value, and if you see any kind of shenanigans going on, you can change it
Yeah.
at any time.
I like what Jeff had to say about things here. I mean, if we're going to make, from my perspective, we're going to continue with this motion, compromise, see how things go, let's move on.
Okay.
That would be where I would be at with it.
Okay.
I like this idea. Again, it's no disrespect to you, Doug, but the fact of the matter is you're new to all of us in some ways. So bear with us while we continue this relationship is all I can say. $7,000 makes a compromise and address some of the issues. It'll move us on in this agenda item, which we clearly need to do.
Yes, we do.
Almost 10 to 1.
Okay. Sarah, would you be willing to amend?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're amending your motion to $7,000. Jeff? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All the amending the manager's spending allowance to be increased from 5,000 to 7,000 as per Sarah's motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And as an indication on my side, I have all the information Walter asked for, and so I'll just give him that.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So next on our list is personnel expenses. Go ahead, Doug. I'm not sure where we're at here on these handouts. Oh, here it is. Recommended pet personnel services fiscal year 2018-19.
Yes.
This is this handout. 1, 2.
And once again, the gray areas are the ones that have been adjusted or a word changed or some type of change.
Okay.
And we've tried to add more supporting information to help you make the decisions better on this. As far as we just got the Payne West insurance update on the workers' comp. There are we looked at historical data on some of these before a lot of these numbers were basically kind of pulled out of the air, I believe, and they were the same across each category. So we went back and looked at, well, what basis could we use? And we came up with bases and rationale, and so you'll see numbers that are much more different than 500 and 300, and they're now 1,166, and they have a basis behind them, based on 3 years of history in some cases. So that's why the numbers look a little different than they did last week.
So the ones that are highlighted have been updated, correct? Is that?
Yes, in the lower right-hand corner of the first page, the overall effect of the proposed personnel changes is an increase of under 13% over the last fiscal year.
Does anybody have any questions? And again, this is review. You don't need any kind of vote or anything on this.
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
Just
this is
review.
just review. So again, if anybody has any questions specific to this, you can email Doug and you can bring that up. So what about the second page?
What's the health reimbursement arrangement? Why did that go down to 68%?
Mark, will you address that?
The health reimbursement arrangement is through Allegiance Health Benefit Plan. We, as port employees, have a $5,000 deductible on our health insurance, and $3,500 of that is covered under this Allegiance plan. It's an assistance to our deductible. In the past, we had budgeted $3,500 as the potential payout per profit center or location. It could be much higher than that if several employees needed to utilize that full expense. This year, what we did is we went back and looked over the 5-year history of what we actually paid out for that benefit, and then we divided that by the number of employees, and that came to about $262 per employee, and we used that average times the number of employees in each profit center to come up with the numbers that you see listed there. So,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Any other questions? Okay. So we're going to move on to project priorities. This was, yes?
Sorry.
That's okay.
What's the back page of this? What's all about? Is this including hires? Are the new hires reflected in this?
Yes, they are, and the projected new hires as well for the next fiscal year.
Along those lines, what's the director of engineering and the handy person?
Yeah, sure. Let me address those in order. The director of engineering position is a new position that we're proposing, and we're looking to take some of the funds that we're spending and have been spending each year for doing engineering related work that we've been contracting out, and they are always very high and large amounts, and we think we can do it more efficiently in-house, do it faster, and we have a lot of permitting and a lot of related type of items to that. So we feel we can keep a registered PE very busy. Then to doing those things, and the port be able to be much more responsive and answer our maintenance needs on our capital items, which are, as you know, falling apart. We've got like $27 million of identified maintenance that needs to be done on our assets. So it's not going to stop. It's going to be an ongoing process. We're in the process, we just began writing the job description for that position. It will be advertised, actually we're going to advertise it more heavily than we typically would. We're going to advertise it in California, Oregon, and Alaska. We're looking for someone with water-related PE experience. And that individual, I think we're looking at bringing them on, what did we hear, midway through the year?
October.
October.
So when you say engineering, give me an example. Can you give me a little more? When you're talking about when PE is going to be designing your project, physically doing something. What do you,
Designing and engineering.
So give me. Can you give us an example?
Can you give us an example, Aaron, of some projects that got done last year
that you had an in-house person that you those things?
So one example would be you already have the ability when we were trying to figure out the questions that we had on all this, the dulse seaweed, the draw line. I had to find somebody that could answer those questions that would be able to do it in a reasonably intelligent way. So I went to a local contractor for that to get those questions answered. Another one is so some of the problems that I've had trying to figure out what the scope of the wall project is going to be over at the road, the seawall. In order for me to be able to put some sort of number on a capital improvements list of what it's going to look like, if I just tell you it's going to be $1.5 million and that's what you make your decisions off of, you're not using very good information. So there's a lower level of engineering that needs where things kind of start, and those are definitely areas where if you have somebody in the office, we could go and say, hey, what are some ideas on how we can fix this big problem? What do you think is going to cost? What would it start to look like? And things like that.
Those types of things get out of hand real quickly too, as you know, in engineering projects of that scope. And for example, one of them I was looking at the other day had the principal of the company tapped in there for so many hours, and I think he was at $237 an hour. That very quickly would pay for a position like this to be able to do these things in-house.
Would this person be able to do maybe possibly grant writing as well?
Absolutely. That's what we envision. That would be part of the job description. And as well as follow-up on permitting, acquiring permits, and permit making sure that we follow through and do what we're supposed to do in the permits. Compliance. Compliance on mitigation. Yes.
That's a big issue, I know.
We have other items like we want to put a hoist out over at the international terminal, another hoist. And the way the thing was built, we're told, it's not going to support that. You can't do that. You're going to have to dig a hole and drop in rebar and do this. Well, if we have an in-house engineer with a PE, we can just do that ourselves.
Yes.
Would this PE be qualified to partner with the general contractors in the CMGC?
Absolutely.
So that 63,000 sounds a little shy or something with all of that ability.
Well, that's for part of the year too. He's being paid at basically the same level as the director. We have budgeted him as the director of finance, the director of operations, and the director of engineering. So similar midline in the matrix, but there's a range there, and each individual will fall in a different place on that range, and we'll have to decide what we're willing to pay him for his qualifications and experience.
What role does oversight does the board play in all of this?
In my understanding of that, my understanding of it is that that's the general manager's position is to do with personnel, and that I am to make those decisions and implement them.
But I mean, to that end, if I'm looking at the numbers right here, for total personnel services, we're looking at roughly a $200,000 increase. Am I reading that right? Between fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19.
Just under 13% of what we did the year before.
But that's, like I said, that's roughly $200,000. Is that what I'm seeing? 190,000.
That would be all of the extra positions that we're putting in. Yes.
Okay, and so maybe to more to Sarah's question, that this increase is something the board would have to approve.
I certainly, through the budget process, they can disapprove the budget. Yes.
That's what I mean. So it's not that the board isn't here to say hire that person, hire that person, but Doug's plan to hire these people is, this is what the board really should be looking at, is the bigger picture that says.
And the 13% is the bottom line.
Bottom line for the whole group. And the reason it was 60-some thousand, Sarah, is because that was for a partial year, not a full year.
So this is something that's weaved into the budget, and again, if we have questions and concerns, we can address those. But, I mean, when we get ready to approve the budget, I mean, obviously, we can make changes and stuff, and then, the manager will have to work around those.
And to address your second question on the handy person, that is basically, lack of a better word, it's kind of a gopher position. We're finding our fairly high-paid individuals are doing a lot of things that they wouldn't need to do if we had one gopher for the whole port that helped out wherever he could. And we plan on putting him out putting his desk out with Don Moon at the international terminal, so we have a second body out there because Don's doing a lot of work that is dangerous and has the potential for someone getting harmed. So I want to have somebody out there as often as we can as well. And then each of our groups we have it segmented. You'll be able to see which ones use him for 10% of the time, which one's 30 on the back of that second sheet. So that's the distribution that we feel we'll use it. And that's a minimum wage individual, basically.
One handyman.
Are we going to need a vehicle?
Handy person.
Is this person going to need a vehicle?
No, I think I believe you could use our existing vehicle.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Next is project priorities. And this is under remaining capital improvements, correct?
The first page is remaining, the others are the recommended, yes. And the remaining hasn't typically been shown before. I just added that in this year because I really wanted you to understand what we have to do for the next 3 months before we get into our fiscal year. And some of those projects may, if we don't get them done in time, they may have to be done into the next year, but we're trying to get these 7 projects done this year.
So, and these projects have already been approved by the board, is that correct?
Some of these are new. See here, solenoid valve that's a new one. Hoist stock, electrical replacement, and 110 dishes and moves. I don't believe those were planned this year. Fire security, automatic alarm, portable hacksaw. These are all new ones that were. Other than that, secure mortgage facility. The others are ones that were added.
Looks like I remember hearing about the hoist stock and electrical replacement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you brought that to us.
We've talked about it, but it's not. It was never voted as capital.
Got it. Okay.
And I got to give it to Aaron. The last couple of days, he's really been working hard on that one. And we actually put it in. It's going to be on our website.
It's on
now. And so we're actually bidding it right now. And
so you're soliciting basically proposals for that work.
Yes.
Okay. So, but I'm curious. By priority, short term sort of helps me, but it doesn't really. I mean, within this list, is there things that you guys see as to me, the electrical system, that thing could blow apart or hurt somebody potentially.
that's why it's number 2.
So
we have prioritized them, even though it doesn't say sub-priority. We would look to you to help us on the sub-priorities if there's some reason that you feel they need to be moved. But they are in the order that we think we should do. Yes.
Oh, they are.
Yes. So at the last meeting that's why he has this sub-priority thing here, was we were to identify if we felt something should be moved up even more. So last week's thing had that, and that's why he has that sub-priority. So these are prioritized in his thing, and if we feel that something needs a higher priority, we can bump it up, and that's what that column is for.
So I guess that's so. Yeah, to your point then. So item number as well is really the priority. So the number, if I'm reading your list right, based on your guys' input, the feeling is the solenoid valve is priority number 1.
Yes.
Then because we could spill a bunch of fuel, I assume, into the
yeah, that's true.
And the hoist stock, so we know electrocute somebody.
Yes.
I gotcha. Okay.
But if you feel that one of those other ones should ramp up, then that's for you.
Yeah, I really just, those first 2, that is something that I'm glad that they are the highest priorities and they're going to get
Thank you.
Okay.
And I should add also, this is again a dynamic document as the others, and I've already got one more on the bottom of this that we walk through out at the international terminal. My focus is to get some business out of the terminal. I found out we don't have any water on the West Wharf. And we're looking at putting people in there. We have electricity out there, we don't have water. So we're going to, we're already working on getting the bids for, and it's not an expensive project, it'll be probably under 6,000, looking at running 2 water standpipes. And we had that in an earlier version, the standpipes. Well, I want to run one all the way over to the far west side, so where the electricity is, so we have both there. We don't want to be having a customer come in, as Yale said, and not be able to address them. And that's, it's an easy thing. It's going to run underneath the pier on the bottom side, so it's not up on top interfering with anybody. We're just running a PVC water line over to the other side and putting a spigot in. I'm sorry?
Yeah. Oh, yes, sir.
There were, as I came in, there's a number of items that have to be done to really get that west side of the international terminal dock up to snuff for shipping, that it really never was completed. So this would just be one of maybe several items.
It was the low-hanging fruit that I saw with a quick solution.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? So this is 2 pages, is that right? Or?
I'm sorry, Aaron, just real quick, the solenoid valve, is there, unless hold up isn't the right word, but what's just in the shortest time frame, what are we doing? How do you replace that? Is it your piping? You have to shut the system down?
Yeah, the system's got to be shut down. It's got to be done at the head of the, up right where the brow goes down to the dock. There's got to be a section removed and then a new solenoid valve installed. It's electrical, so there's potential for problems with it. When we go to install it, there's potential for a couple days of downtime involved with it.
Gonna say what's the impact?
And that's the only source of gasoline. So it's going to be a difficult one to get squeezed in here, but we have to get it done.
Yeah. Are you guys also going out for an RFP for that as well?
Yes, we will be.
Okay. And when do you think you'll get at least those top 2 things done by the end of the year?
I'm going to try my best.
Okay. That's my plan.
Okay. Any other questions?
On all of this recommended stuff, or?
Well, I'm just,
these,
gosh, it says, on my handout, it says 17, 18, 19. Is that right?
No,
17, 18.
the next page are 15 items, and they are the recommended
Right.
capital projects for next year.
Okay. Yeah, staff recommendations.
And Walter has already, let me just, if I could, go over Walter's suggested
Sure,
changes,
absolutely.
because we agree with all of these. The NOAA rankings, all 3 of those NOAA items are, 2 of them are required by contract, and all 3 of those will now take priorities 1, 2, and 3 for NOAA. So NOAA will move to the head of the list.
Okay.
Number 2 is the rogue seawall. We're going to move that up to very high priority. Not fixing the seawall, finding out what the issues are and investigating what we need to do to correct them.
Got it.
That was item
8.
16 instead of seawall.
I have elevated road brewery seawall number 8.
Yeah,
we're on
number 8. Item 8. Yes. And then the next item he suggested is combining 4 and 15. 4 and 15, bear with me because they already done it on our list. They were I think the Port Dock 7 and the Port Dock 5 and 7 were. The idea was there to combine them so that when we mobilized, we only mobilized the vendors once instead of twice and save some money there and time. Because on a lot of the capital improvements that we do, they're in-water work, and we have a very short window from, say, November through a couple of month period there where we have to get that done. And previously, a lot of the mobilization didn't even get done until halfway through that period. We can't do that.
Most of that cost was the mobilization, so just combine them at the same time.
Do you have a question on it, Jeff?
I was just trying to,
See where you're at.
Just that's.
Yes, Sarah.
What's a load center?
A load center is like a breaker panel.
okay, I was confused because these are, the old numbers are referenced, but it's hard to
They are
combine.
down in one of those
Okay, thanks.
outbuildings that are right down here. They had an 8 out, I believe.
Aaron, on the hoist replacement, did you get the quotes or ballparks for that? It's
I'm
135.
still working on it. I just exchanged emails with North Pacific Crane this morning to try and they got more details and they need to give us a decent quote on it. And then I'm going to go to Uquina Boat as well and see what they can come up with on it. But I'm still working on it.
Okay. And that's, you're thinking you're going to take advantage of the existing reinforcements of the dock for that?
Yeah, I was just under the pier yesterday, and it's fairly, I mean, the bolt pattern's straightforward, and we should be able to get something to bolt right up to it. I think it'd be a good thing for us changing bolts out as well.
Yeah. Just so we don't have to not only replace the crane, we got to replace everything underneath it too, but it sounds like we're in good shape.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right, good.
The last item that Walter had was making item 12 the last priority, so moving that down to the bottom.
12 being the used oil bilge above ground waste containment. Tank and pat, is that one?
Yeah, my only reasoning for that was that's a pretty big cost on that. And it just fell below the priority on some of these other things.
Okay.
And then he had some other items that I didn't agree with, that staff didn't agree with, and we told him why. And I didn't do the changes here, but there were a couple of other suggestions.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
What is the 1,200 foot of gravel east end, crown gravel base paved, 1,200 foot gravel Liberty T Road east end? Is that basically from all the truck traffic, the main road coming from the east entrance?
It's two areas out there. One is the main road. It's got some pretty good potholes in it, and we'll probably, as you know, when you go in, there's a nice speed bump, but everybody has a nice area where they drive around the speed bump, so we may like extend that a bit. And Aaron said he wasn't sure what that drive around was. I said, that's to get around the speed bump.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and then the area where you, about near the far end of the storage, where it's paved, if you turn and go to where the barges are in that area, we're going to be fixing up that road, so that we have some other plans for some tenants that have some interest in doing some stuff there.
The barges and
That'll facilitate some barge work out there.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So now, where are we?
The next item is, next sheet is the same projects that we just discussed, but they're categorized by fund.
Are we at the top of identify capital? This one. This one says Port of Newport? Yes.
So a couple things like Port Dock 5 and the seawall, those
Are
are
you
things.
back on this, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. Which page are you on? We're Port Dock 18?
Yes.
Okay.
So two things that could end up being, we could be on their timeline instead of them being on our timeline. I mean, they could fail or require being addressed before we have the money and desire to address them. I don't know if that's, and I know you guys are hands are tied on what you do about that, but is there any discussion about, we have the Port Dock 5 engineering for $86,000 this year, and we have the seawall. I lost track of that, but so at some point they may change our.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any way to. There's probably not any way to address that before the budget cycle, as far as trying to better acquire the necessary timing to make sure that
emergencies will come up, and we can't really predict
Yeah.
what they are, other than, okay, everyone's identified the seawall as a problem. We have to pay attention to it, so we're going to do this 10,000 or under 10,000 initial study, decide what to do. Aaron and I walked it the other day, and I was actually pretty pleased. I was really apprehensive when I heard everybody talking about it. The problem, I don't think, from an engineering standpoint, is huge, because we're not going to mess with the wall that's there. We're going to leave it there and probably build outside of it something new. So it's not as big of concern to me now than oh my God, we're going to dig out underneath the Rogue brewery and we're going to replace stuff under there. That's not what we're going to do.
Okay. Okay. All right. I was trying to formulate the questions I was talking, but basically, we may get in the middle of the budget year and this is no good, and everything's reshuffled, but we don't really have we can't predict that, but I don't know if there's at some point we can get a better prediction of we have to do this by this time and it's going to cost such and such. And I don't know if that's something we can get to, or
I think we've kind of addressed that in a way for the next sheets, where further down a couple sheets, where all of the individual profit center folks, the commercial marina, the international terminal, they've all identified their wish list of things they already know need to be done too, like $27 million worth of them.
Yeah.
So we're only selecting for this year what we really think we better do.
Yeah.
We better find the money for it.
okay. All right, thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay, now, any other questions? We're going to move on. Go ahead, Doug.
Next sheet is all those same numbers by fund.
Okay,
So no.
this is page 19.
And you'll see in gray it says no grants yet. I haven't had a chance to work on any grants. Haven't even been here a month.
Okay.
But we do have a meeting Wednesday on possible grant. But we're certainly going to address that as soon as we can.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, you sent out an email about the interactions that you've had with Evan Hall and Rhonda's. Have those any changes to anything they're proposing next fiscal year made it into this yet? Or is that, I can't remember your exact date of when you met with.
No, we're still in talks with them, and there are actually some very positive things coming out of that. And so that's all I'd like to say right now. But if it moves forward, I'll certainly, as it moves forward, I'll certainly bring that to the board. And at some point, it will involve some negotiations on leases and what have you. And we would probably go into executive session with the attorney at that time.
But none of that is implemented into
No,
this?
no, ma'am.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Well, it looks like the only thing that was highlighted on here was just no grants yet, right? So that was the only thing. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we still have the ability that if we feel some of these should be prioritized, we do it in the sub-priority column, correct?
Please,
Okay.
we would welcome that.
Yeah, does everybody
I'm still going to
understand?
have like the same timeline as giving our recommendations and personnel expenses and
It's all in there.
fees, rates and fees that will be ready. We have to give and Doug all of our input to be ready for the May night.
Yes.
This would be on the same.
Yes,
timeline.
correct. Make sure you get that in.
When you talk, I'm sorry, sub-priorities, I mean, I'm still a little confused here. We've got 3 months to finish the fiscal year. I mean, in terms, there's not much.
We
can
use the same form for all the sheets, and the form from last year had priority as the first column, and the second column was priority. So that was a little confusing, and so I just renamed the second one sub-priority, and
Gives us an opportunity
Exactly.
to.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is sort of more what you want from us. I mean, you want us to go through.
we've already, these are our recommendations. If you want to change our recommendations, that's what we want from you, and the rationale of why you'd like to change them, so that we can understand that.
So the task for the board is assessing priorities based on each one of these cost centers. So because it's not a priority list of 30 different items on here that you've identified, it's within the international terminal there's 7 items here. You would be looking for the.
No, that was, we used one form throughout there, but all we really
Well, like, let's take, for example, page 20. I see the international terminal, there's 6 items there. And as a board member, it seems like, I mean, my initial take was, hey, Commissioner, go look at what we've got planned for the international.
No, I'm sorry, absolutely not, no.
1 through 6 to those.
No, that's not what we're looking for. Matter of fact, that was the feedback from that particular supervisor. We've already taken things from that list and put them over here on the next fiscal year's list. So what we're not necessarily even looking, we're not saying, please, change everything around. This is what we recommend, and we have rationale for it. But if we did a mistake or we had some oversight and we missed something, or we'd certainly like to hear it.
And so the task at hand is saying, hey, here's what all the staff recommended from their cost centers. You guys diluted that list to page 18, where you've assigned the sub priorities 1 through 15. And you're saying, hey, commissioners, take a look at this. Let us know that's the list for which is going to guide the court from both priorities, financially and operationally speaking, for the next year.
Yes, that was our intent.
That's what you want this feedback on based on the information. Okay, just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any other questions?
I had a couple of other items that maybe they don't fall in that category.
Are they project priorities?
Not in project priorities, no.
Okay. Is it going to be helpful to this? Is it regarding?
It will be helpful to personnel services. I missed one to tell you on that.
Okay.
And then one was a life-saving effort went on recently. I just wanted to point that out.
Here. Tell me which one you're on here.
Okay, personnel services.
Which page is it?
First page.
Well, mine starts at 17, so.
Page 13.
13?
So, you recall, obviously, the presentation that was made on the finances by Todd Kimball. And in that, the item on personnel services he had evaluated, I think it was 16 different ports in Washington and Oregon, and looked at the personnel costs or the investments in personnel that we made as a percent of the total revenue of our port. And then he ranked those 17 ports, and we came in number 1. Let me clarify that we were number 1 on the bottom. So at that point in time, when he ran those numbers, we were about 21% of the spending that we do went towards personnel. Now, in the new proposals, that number moves from 21% to 27%. So what we're trying to point out there is we're still lower on the list, but we're making some progress.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Is that for new hires or is it giving people raises?
Combination of both. The total overall situation.
So I'm sure you've probably done this, but I mean, one of the things that's going through my head in this is there is a balance between hiring new people, but also an important retention component that goes to adjusting salaries to be more competitive for the employees that you have already. And what impacts that's going to have on hiring new people as opposed to potentially compensating the existing people you have. Because I think people oftentimes lose sight. There's 2 different things between recruitment and retention. And while retention isn't exclusively rooted on money, it's a big part of it, especially when, as you said, we're kind of down on the totem pole. So did you evaluate, I mean, you must have thought about the balance between investing in new people as opposed to the ones
we gave thought to it, but we also realized, the port's in a very special situation there. The reason the port has been able to find such good people, and you do have a lot of great staff, the reason you've been able to keep them, some of them for so many years, for decades, is because they want to be here for different reasons, not because they're getting paid well. And fortunately, that's the case, but that's not always the case when you're looking for new people. And so we also have a number of those people who have been here for decades who are highly skilled and have the historical knowledge of what to watch for and what's going to come up next season and what have you, who are getting close to retiring, very, very close. And so we're looking at taking that into account and figuring out how we're going to address that by promoting from within the folks that we have and training them and getting them to the stage that they can handle these things adequately so we don't go backwards when those folks do retire.
Yes, Sarah.
It's never good to have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. It's my observation.
Okay. All right. We are done with project priorities. So next is public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Can I make a public comment?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Everything I say is public, isn't it?
Right.
Basically, this last Sunday, shortly before, just after 4 a.m., there was one of our TCB security folks that was on duty heard a woman screaming over by Port Dock 7, and it turned out she was in the water. He pulled her to safety. So I just wanted to put that forth, and I think they did an outstanding job there. And
she's okay?
She's fine. She even refused to go get help.
Medical attention. Okay.
There was a write-up on other incoming dispatch.
Oh, okay.
Also, just real quick, Doug, I appreciate there was some mix-up with my email that we got resolved, but I did get your update on the collective leases at the port.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if other people got that as well, but it was helpful is what I was looking for. I may have a follow-up to that. I appreciate forwarding that on to me.
And I appreciate the fact that you asked for it, because it was an eye-opener for me, too.
It's an eye-opener for me, but I'm still digging into it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, feel free to, if you have questions, and again, this is still like a homework assignment, so go over the information that we addressed today in our meeting, and if you have any kind of corrections or questions, please send them off to Doug, and he'll, yes, Sarah.
I really like the simple, nice form. I don't know who was responsible for it. It said, South Beach, all three of our profit centers that make up South Beach, a number of a percent of the overall. I really like that. It was a simple, okay, very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so, no other business, no more public comment? Okay, we are adjourned in 1